Good evening, wherever you are in the world. I know for the three of us, we're still in morning. It's 11:30 a.m. on the East Coast. It's 8:30 a.m. in California, where Jeanne is. And I believe you're only an hour behind me, Carmen.
Yes, I am.
So we have three different time zones just in the United States. Now, Cameron and Jeff could not come today, and I was very sad when they told me that. But I think I have a marvelous group, three of us, to talk about visualization and visualizing how we want our world to be. Because actually, we create our world by what we think. And if we think people are being negative, they're going to be negative towards us. But if we switch it to a more positive approach in our mind, we're going to find that more and more people just kind of gather around us and become a part of our world. Now, having said that, Jeanne knows that I need to get some work done in order to get the show out. And I'm hoping I'm going to put the YouTube link in the chat in 2 seconds. But as I'm doing that, I'm going to have Jeanne take over. And she's real good at this. And we will get this show rock and rolling. Go ahead, Jeanne.
Thank you, Carla. I love the idea of visualizing greatness, of actually picturing where we want to be, what we want to do, and what our intention is. So I picked out a couple of interesting quotes. This time it's 3, usually it's 2, but the third one is one of my favorites. So the first one is from an author and a social psychologist, Dr. Bo Bennett. And he basically says, visualization is daydreaming with a purpose. I love that. Daydreaming is a good thing to do, in moderation, of course, but to have a purpose to it, it's like that, the idea about planning, a plan is a dream until you actually do it, kind of thinking. And then Jack Canfield writes, when you have inspired thought, you have trust, you have to trust it, and you have to act on it. So that takes it from visualization is daydreaming with a purpose to trusting your thought and having to act on it. So I thought those worked well together. And then one of my favorite passages from Marianne Williamson is, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So taking it to the next level, you're visualizing daydreaming with the purpose, you trust your thought, and you have to act on it. And by liberating your own thoughts, you allow others to liberate theirs. So I thought the progression was interesting.
And I agree. I'm wondering what Carmen has to say, because she was excited about this topic. So
You are right. I am excited about this topic, Carla. Thank you so much for having me here today. So people in general, it's been my experience that people tend to underestimate the power of visualization. Visualization is one of our most useful and at-ready tools we have in our toolbox to help craft our world and our reality the way we want it to go. There are numerous studies out there about the power of visualization and how it can help you be better at whatever it is you want to be better at. And Jeanne, I loved the quotes you gave us this morning, just a moment ago. The daydreaming with a purpose, the daydreaming with intent. I haven't heard that one personally before, and that's exactly what it is. So go ahead and let yourself daydream, and daydream with a purpose.
I love it. I can recall as a child, and when Kurt watches this, he'll love it. I recall doing this, and Kurt does this peace meditation with, I don't have the exact words, but everything in peace, peace is everywhere kind of thing. And he rocks back and forth. And I remember as a child, waking up, getting ready for breakfast and sitting at the table doing this, but kind of looking up towards the corner, and, it would drive my dad crazy, because I'm just moving and he's thinking, you need to sit still and eat your breakfast. But I would be daydreaming. I have no recollection what the daydream was, but it was kind of a form of meditation that as a child, it calmed me down. And as an adult, I was trying to get back to that feeling at one point, and I started to rock back and forth. And I realized when my son was a baby, and now with my grandkids, I'm obviously doing this a lot, but it still calms me down. And when I can kind of glaze over my eyes when I'm just sort of looking out into space, I have some of the most interesting thoughts that, I wish I had automatic transcription that, from AI so that they would be transcribed and I wouldn't lose them. But the thought patterns are clearer, and I can think about an issue, a problem, or a dream and picture it. So that brought visualization back. It's like we get into a rhythm where we're doing all the things that we have to do. And we forget that sometimes we have to look, forward. Where are we going? What are we doing? In business, I typically tell people, let's take a 10,000 foot view so you don't see all the detail. And that helps clear out some of the discussion. So I think when we visualize, we have to visualize at 10,000 feet, but we often are visualizing where we're at the moment. And to visualize greatness, I think we have to let the clutter go. And that's difficult because we're used to being human doings, not human beings. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And the thing is, we are human beings, but we're so concerned about doing that we forget that we need to be. I loved what you said about that, because we are doing more than we need to if we could only be. Carmen, you look like you have something to say.
I really like that. We have to focus on being more than doing. And it's interesting this is coming up because this is something I have personally been working on in my life, is just being more present instead of, okay, I have to be here and here, instead of the logistics of it all, right? But so that's something I really find that interesting that came up for me in this moment, because it's something I've been focusing on. Jeanne, I really liked how you said when you were a kid, you would visualize and daydream and you would rock back and forth, because there's so many things that can trigger us or cause us to go into that state of visualization or daydreaming. It could be any of our five senses that start it, right? You could smell fresh baked cookies and then all of a sudden start visualizing something from your past. Maybe you're in someone's kitchen that's important to you and it smelled just like those cookies. You can hear a song, and it's like there's a song I hear and that would play it a lot when I was a freshman in high school. So I always think of my friend Carrie when I hear this particular song because she played that song over and over and over and over again. And I just started visualizing our past and kind of daydreaming about our past. And it's really interesting because when you visualize the past, when you play things over again in your mind or daydream about things that have happened, you might start looking at them in a different lens, and you might start looking at them in a different way. And it's a lot of fun to pick out those great moments and have an appreciation and gratitude for those great moments that you can recall.
It is, because oftentimes we recall the bad moments.
Yes.
Or the difficult moments.
Mm-hmm.
I actually call that reauthoring, using the skills of an author to edit the stories we have in our head. And for me, part of my meditation is to look at what's bothering me at the moment and try and figure out what I'm repeating and then reauthor that story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm struggling with writing, I clearly hear a couple of people that were strong in my formative years who would say, you can't do that. You know, that's not how you do it. Or this isn't great. You need to go do it again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that, I don't know if other authors go through that, but I'm constantly going through that. And I actually had a boss who told me that I couldn't write. I mean, her words were, if I'd have known you couldn't write, I wouldn't have given you this job. And that stung deep in my heart, you know, and I had to go to a friend of mine who was a writing coach and taught engineers how to write in English instead of technobabble. And she looked at my stuff and she said, the only problem with your writing is it's a different style. You're much more of a journalist than a fictional writer. And I was kind of blown away from that because I was in PR at the time and journalism was the style that I should be writing in. So I typically, when I start to remember those stories, I bring up my friend saying it's about style. You know, and then I have another friend who was an author and she said, it's more important to put words on a page. Editing is when you make it great. And so in our head, we have the words on the page. And so when I'm talking to people about reauthoring, it's think about those stories. Is it your story or is it a story somebody else gave you? Yeah, I have a story from when I was 2 years old. And apparently I fed the fish, you know, and as if you can imagine a 2-year-old feeding the fish, it's open and dump, you know. So my mother was upset because the fish were gone. They overate. And my older brothers and sisters were in trouble because my mother thought that they fed the fish. So she sent them to their room and they were worried that they were all going to get in trouble and get spanked or whatever. So they made one of my sisters do a lie detector test. She was probably 5 or 6 at the time. They put a glass of water on her hand. And if she spilled the water, she must be lying. Well, she was doing this before they even put the glass of water. So what came out of that is a story that I caused all this trouble. I was 2 years old. I grew up thinking that I was the troublemaker, you know, for many years. And when I realized that I was 2 years old, you know, and all I was doing was helping, because that's what my mother said. I actually fessed up and I said, I help, I feed fish, you know. But that was a story my sisters told me over and over and over. So when I re-edited it in my mind, like I was 2 years old and I was helping. I was doing something innocent and everything is good. You know, so we can do that with the stories in our mind by looking, did somebody give it to us? And we need to reinterpret it? Or is it our story and we need to re-look at it and see what was the lesson and remember the lesson? And that helps clear out some of the clutter that gets in our way. And that helps me with something as simple as visualization, because all those voices that tell those stories get in the way and you have filter after filter after filter after filter to get through to see what your mind really wants you to see.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's very important to reauthor, just as you said, because then you can visualize the future with a different filter and with a different lens. So you can craft your greatness and visualize the greatness that you want and that you deserve in life.
But yeah, I kind of like the story of the rose-colored glasses. You know, everybody was telling me how, you know, made her vision kind of cockeyed and stuff. But to me, having that filtered rose color means it's more positive and you can pick out the good. You know, sometimes I have blue colored glasses, and those are the ones that I use to calm down. You know, and green I use when I want to work on health. I decided color has power. And if I put those filters on in my mind's eye, it changes how I see things.
But what about the person who begins flipping from positive to negative? How do we help that person grow more into the positive and away from negative? Because those negative thoughts are still there. They didn't run away yet.
Right. So my goal with that, Carla, is to say, forget about getting rid of all the negative thoughts, right? If you need to switch from positive to negative, let's just start adding more positive. You may still have some negative thoughts creep up, and that's okay. We're wired that way as humans. We evolved that way as humans because we wanted to avoid that saber-toothed tiger in the bush way back in the day. And so start finding ways to find just a few more positive thoughts. If you realize you're having a negative thought, think of 3 positive thoughts. And that starts to rewire your brain. It starts to get you into those positive neural pathways, those neural pathways of gratitude. And you can start changing the color of your glasses to one that's going to benefit you.
Now, there are those people who are having that problem because they've been stuck in that negativity for so long. I had a very dear friend who I wouldn't believe would have all these negative things going through his mind, and yet it's there. How do we help people make that flip and help them realize, hey, that's negative. Why are you thinking that? Well, that's what I've been thinking all my life. And making that flip is not an easy flip to make. Yes, Jeannie.
There are 2 thoughts that I have. One is recognizing the emotion that goes with it. I've learned over time, you can fight with logic, but you can't fight emotion with logic. You can't fight emotion, period. Everybody has the right to feel what they're feeling. So there's a little bit of the need to commiserate, but to bridge. I mean, communications, what bridge means is summarizing what's said, finding that bridge to get to what you want to say. And, you know, we see it every day when we hear politicians speak or we hear really good orators speak. I love watching President Obama get questions because he's very adept at saying, I know what you're asking, but here's what I want to talk about. But he does it in such a way that you're not even aware of it. So it's a practice. But in this case, you acknowledge that emotional kind of push that you're feeling from somebody, acknowledge it, and then give them a way to move out one step at a time. I understand that this is a really difficult time you're going through, Carla, but let's start to look at a little bit of where we're going. Let's just look a little bit further, you know, so that you get that step up. Sometimes I say to them, actually, I treat them like they're a business person. I say, let's look at 10,000 feet. Where are we going? Are we making progress? And that kind of jolts them out of that pattern, because I think it's a pattern and you have to break it. And then once that pattern's broken, it's a little easier to get away. You know, kind of, it's that, I don't know if you remember this one, Carmen, but there's a saying about the broken heart lets light in, you know, and it gets stronger. You know, it's that kind of thing with thinking. You have to take a break in the thinking to go off on a different tangent. Does that make sense, Carmen?
Yeah, it's a pattern interrupt. A pattern
That's
interrupt.
good. I like that.
Yeah. So what, you know, there's a lot of ways to do pattern interrupts. So that's exactly what you're describing, though. Let's interrupt your pattern of negative thinking, get you to think about something else, basically open that gatekeeper in your mind between your conscious and unconscious minds, so we can move you to a new place. And it may be a temporary move. We can still move you to a new place. And so whether that pattern interrupt is like what you said, you know, okay, 10,000 foot come meet me up here. Whether it's you start doing some sort of motion or tapping on the counter, whatever that pattern interrupt is, it gets them to stop, change what they're focusing on so you can help relocate them.
Yeah, actually, I have a voice in my head, a thought pattern that I named. And as much as I love my father, I named it Dad. And that's the one that's pushing me, because I learned his language of love was to push me and never to overemphasize what I did good, but he would say things like, you could do better, or I expected more from you. And I hear that and it makes me feel, little, like I didn't accomplish. But I've learned over the years, when I hear it, when I'm conscious of it, I say, okay, Dad, you need to shut up now. And I first felt guilty because my dad's been gone for a long time, but I love him dearly. But that language of love kind of stilted my growth a little bit. And now it's time for me to get out of it, right? To move forward. So in my mind, I say what I never would have said out in the real world, but shut up, Dad, it's my turn. Or sometimes I play, and I just made my one of my friends laugh because I said, okay, left brain, it's your turn to stop. Right brain needs to go. I need to be creative. And those kinds of things that I say out loud to myself help me break a pattern. So Carla, I would think that folks that are, if they could be conscious that they're in a pattern, if they could find something that lets them break it, for me, it's, feeling empowered to say, hush up, Dad, or the other voice I named is David Letterman. That's the snarky one, the one that wants to say things that you think are witty, but could be hurtful, but, they're snarky, period. And you go, yeah, David, that's not coming out now, but I can laugh within my head, within myself. And I find that kind of empowering because those voices used to color how I would move out in the world. And now I'm able to balance them a little bit, and do things like rock back and forth, or pull out my computer and do some digital painting, or take my dogs for a walk and listen to, the latest on news radio so I could be railing at politics or something, anything that breaks what I've been stuck in, because stuck is simply stuck. If you get into, a space where you're stuck, it's up to you to break it and move forward. And I think visualizing is a big part of that, because we can get stuck. We get busy. We don't have the money. We don't have the resources, or we might not have the talent to do what we're visualizing. But one of the things I learned when I opened myself up to some spiritual stuff was, visualize it and let the universe bring what you need. It's that when the student is ready, the teacher will come kind of thinking. So we put our own blinders on, I guess. And sometimes we have to take them off and just see, because as Marianne Williamson said, it's the light that we're afraid of. It's the light within us. And we need to let that shine.
And you are the light. We all are the light. One thing that I noticed, it seems in the past few days that people are saying, oh, things are a little crazy. Nothing seems to be going right. But then after they say it, it seems to turn around. And it could be the whole law of attraction, that if, I've been going through stuff, everyone I know seems to be going through stuff. And supposedly our day today, 11/11, is supposed to be knock all of that out of the water if you can keep your thoughts in a positive direction and move forward. It's the most powerful day for manifestation. And the reason I bring it up is that the people I have spoken to are constantly saying, oh, wow, how can I change this because it doesn't look good? And I keep on asking them, because I ask myself the same question. What do you want to see? How do you want the world to be? And maybe we should focus on what we want in the world instead of what we are seeing in the world. And I love those nods from both of you, but I'm going to go to Carmen and then come back to Jeanne, because Jeanne, you just spoke. Carmen.
You are 100% correct, Carla. What you focus on expands. And so you need to make sure you are focusing on what you actually want. So your unconscious mind is an extremely powerful computer. It's kind of like a GPS. And so if you let's say you want to be healthy and you're working on visualizing yourself being healthy, whatever that means for you. If you tell yourself, I don't want McDonald's, your unconscious mind is going to go, McDonald's? I could go for a Big Mac. Let's go get one. Right? So instead of telling your mind what you don't want, tell it what you want. I want some healthy food. Okay, let's go find some healthy food. Because your unconscious mind, like I said, it's a computer, it's a GPS. And it's also lazy. It wants to give you everything you want, following the path of least resistance. And so you have to be very conscientious about your internal monologues, your thoughts, your visualizations, and what you say, and what you put out into the world. So let's say I want to get rid of my debt, and I keep saying, oh, I don't want debt. I don't want debt. I don't want debt. My unconscious mind is going, debt? Let's go shopping. Let's go get some more debt. Instead, I should be saying, I want $10,000 or whatever to pay off my credit cards. I should be manifesting the revenue or manifesting the profits and income to pay it off instead. And so figure out ways to be very, very specific about what it is you want. Because the universe, your unconscious mind, is listening, and it'll help you find what you say you want. So be very, very careful about what you say you want. Make sure you're thinking about it from the right perspective.
And sometimes that's difficult.
Yes.
But it can be done. I mean, I saw myself flipping a really specific thought within 30 times in a minute today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why am I thinking that? I don't want that. I want this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an easy thing to do. And wait a minute, I shouldn't say it's not easy. It is easy. I just need to be aware.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to be aware of what I'm thinking. So it's also how we say these things. Also, and it's not, okay, I don't want to be in debt, and I'm going to think of myself having all the abundance I want. And then you think, I don't want to be I don't want debt. And the moment you say that, you're bringing debt back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting it?
Yes, you're getting it. And what I love, Carla, is that you're catching yourself and you're correcting yourself. And so it will take some practice. Because if you listen to any TV show, any movie, you read a book, again, we're wired to be negative, and that really is expressed in our language that we use every day. And so what I love, Carla, is that you caught yourself. So I don't want debt. Excuse me. I want to manifest the revenue to pay off my debt so I can be debt free. It's that simple of a correction. So whether you're saying it out loud or you're thinking it in your mind, it's okay to go, I don't want, excuse me. Let me reframe that. I do want this.
And it takes practice.
It does.
It takes
and
practice.
That's okay.
It'll become a muscle memory once you practice it enough. But what is enough? You won't know until it becomes a muscle memory.
Now, before you go on, I went to see how YouTube was doing on the phone. And a quote from Abraham Hicks: enjoy life because it's all coming very soon. And I mean, it's perfect for what we're talking about
Mhm.
because we forget to enjoy and we get stuck in what we don't want. And I think it's time. I mean, this dog is a crazy dog. I thought he was going to die a year ago now. I thought I was getting ready to put him down. And I had all these thoughts that this dog, no, I'm not ready to let him go. I'm going to keep him alive. And even the vet said to me, he can stay alive. He's not ready to go. And I was like, oh, really? Look at what he weighs. Look at his weakness. Well, today he was barking at something outside the window. Um, this time last year, I thought I had heard him bark the last time I would ever hear him bark. So it is how we think that makes things happen. Carmen, I don't know who wanted to go next. So
I was going to respond to, you had said earlier that everybody says things are going crazy and it's chaotic, and I started smiling. We had our Toastmasters meeting on Saturday, and I have two very astute astrologers in my Toastmasters club. So they schooled us on the new moon in Scorpio and how it causes chaos, and it's working its way through, and it'll work through about the 18th. So just be steady in what you want and work through the chaos. So it just makes me kind of smile to see that it's not just us. There are some call it collective consciousness sort of patterns that we need to work through and understand that as individuals, we can work through them. There can be a lot of chaos out there. My favorite switch that I did a while ago is the whole Friday the 13th mythology. It's a bad day, things are going to happen. And I go, what? Friday 13th is a day of luck, as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to start looking at a day, let's call it lucky. Yeah. And so when people start that's the first thing I say, and that changes the conversation. So we have a way to change things, and it's in our own perspective and our own good graces that we can do it. So the other thing I wanted to bring up, because Carla, you mentioned it's 11/11 today, and I did a little research in my university, University of Google. I have a PhD from it.
I think we all do.
Yes, and I love it. But seeing 11/11 is a wake-up call as a divine message. It says angelic beings want to bring you clarity and guidance in your life. What better time for that than this time than the astrology charts are telling us it's chaotic. It says that all things, including numbers, have specific vibrations and accompanying frequencies. The number 11 is a very spiritual and powerful number. And just like the other numbers and symbols around us, 11/11 vibration is establishing itself as part of a collective consciousness. So it's a point where, when 11/11 comes up, whether you're in the kitchen looking at a timer, or if you're, looking at the calendar today, which is Veterans Day, it has a certain vibration, 11/11. And we all empower that vibration with our collective thinking. And so it's interesting that the 11th day of the 11th month marks armistice, or the day the fighting ended in Western Europe during the First World War. We call it Veterans Day. At 11 a.m. Paris time on November 11th in 1918, it was deemed that this would be a day of remembrance. And it's a day of remembrance around the world. It's not just here in the United States. So we've imbued 11/11 with a lot of different meanings, but a lot of power. And that, I bring it up because it's a kind of a manifestation of the power of intent. And as we talk about visualization, we're looking at that purpose, that intent of what we want. And I think, Carmen, you said it, visualization is not recognized as powerful as it is. It's not a tool that we use often that we probably should. It goes with things like journaling and my favorite exercise, the vision board, where you're actually instructing kind of the right brain, which can only see graphically in pictures, versus the left brain, which gives us all this logic and words. So you're setting yourself up for seeing, being, believing something bigger than yourself when you start to use visualization, and allowing that light that Marianne Williamson talks about to shine. So if we each have a spark of divinity, whether we call it divinity, God, Allah, or whatever, that spark of divinity might seem real small, but in reality, it's huge, because it's a connection to the rest of the sparks of divinity. And there's this huge, huge collection of resources that we can call on, and we can call on it through how we picture it in our mind. And this is all coming together in a way I haven't thought of before. But I've always liked the idea that the right brain doesn't know if a picture is real or just a picture. So I'm working off of that. When I'm working on the right brain, when I'm doing something creative, I'm allowing that spark to take over. And my left brain is the one that puts the governing on it, kind of tamps it down to keep me safe. And God love it, it keeps me safe. But it tells me why we have to integrate what we often call light and dark. If I were to draw a picture, I'm going to shadow something because I want it to look like, something real. So I use the example of a circle, and the viewers have heard me say this. You draw the circle and it's just that, it's a circle on a piece of paper. But you take your pencil, you put it to the side, and you start to shade in on one side and kind of go around it, and it starts dark, and then you come up a little lighter. You're going to start making that circle into a three-dimensional sphere, because the shade is just as important as the light. So our left brain and our right brain, do that right, our left brain and our right brain are just as important. It's how we integrate. And that purpose that Bo Benson, Bo Bennett, that purpose, daydreaming, visualizing is daydreaming with a purpose, helps us integrate the logic and the creative. It's if we can get that into the collective consciousness, wow.
That'd be very powerful. And so, Jeanne, you said something that reminded me of a technique I do when I visualize. And so you said your brain doesn't recognize if it's happened yet or not. And so there's two ways to visualize if you are in the picture. You can either see yourself as if you're watching yourself in a movie, or you can see yourself in first person as if you're watching through your own eyes. And so what I've heard, and then what I tell people is, if you want to give your unconscious mind a directive to go make this happen, visualize yourself as if you're watching yourself in a movie. You can see your whole body in it, because that tells your unconscious mind this hasn't happened yet. If you visualize as if you're seeing it through your own eyes, that tells your mind, check, it's done, already happened. And so just changing the way you visualize sometimes can make a big difference in giving your unconscious mind direction to go help make it happen. So the next time you are visualizing or daydreaming with intention, or visualizing with intention, see yourself in the picture, your whole body in the picture. See everybody around you, their full body in the picture, and see if it makes a difference.
Interesting. Perspective.
It's actually seeing your body in the picture.
Yeah, actually. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're visualizing a new car. You want a blue Tesla, because I want a blue Tesla.
I want a red one, but go on.
Red one. Okay. So instead of visualizing me driving the car as if I'm actually in the driver's seat and I can see my own hands on the steering wheel, visualize myself in the car as if I'm standing across the street and see the car pulling out of my driveway. and see my whole body in the car and me driving the car away. That's called disassociated. When it's first person, as if I was driving the car and I could see my hands on the steering wheel, that's associated. And it's more powerful for your mind to see you driving the car out of your driveway, because it's telling your mind that hasn't happened yet. I'm getting a direction. I need to get creative and go find ways to make that happen.
Interesting.
I always thought it was the associated one that you were supposed to do in order to make it happen. So what you're telling me, I'm not saying you're wrong.
I'm sure there's different theories out there. But when I visualize myself as disassociated.
And does it come quicker when you?
I think it does.
Do you see the Tesla coming soon? I'm just curious.
The Tesla will be here in a year. Blue.
Okay, Blue. I'm on red, so.
Okay, we'll get you a red one. By the way, it is officially 11:11 in my time zone right now. My computer clock just turned, so I just wanted to take a moment. It's 11:11 on 11:11, at least in Central Time.
So let's take a moment and close our eyes and visualize what we want in the world right now. Take a deep breath in. Bring in what you want. And let go of everything you don't want. Let's do it once more. And let go of what you don't want. And open your eyes. So we will all get what we want. And we're going to visualize greatness. I actually had one of the things that I wanted to happen actually happened during this show.
Oh, good.
I was like, what? I checked it out on the phone and oh, that happened. So it is how we think. Our greatness is within us. And we should just acknowledge it and not think, oh, I don't have it yet. We do have it. And we have had it for a while. If that makes sense.
It does. Sometimes I think, sometimes I think things are happening and we're just not aware. And I think being aware is part of what we're talking about. Being aware and open to signals that we may not have been open to before. You know, something is always happening. We get to help through our thoughts and our emotions. We get to help color what's happening and participate. We can choose to participate and we can choose not to, because that's one of our greatest superpowers is the power of choice. And if we choose to focus on the good and the stuff that we're trying to manifest, then that's going to be much more powerful than focusing on the things that aren't happening. And I think that's the difference between positive thinkers and negative thinkers. I think most often people think of positive thinkers as being Pollyannish and being a little simplistic, but really it's about looking for the good, looking for the progress, looking for the forward movement versus staying stuck, saying what can't work, and always looking kind of at that negative side. So part of visualizing greatness is visualizing being open and learning how to accept some of that greatness, because that's one of the things that I've heard And I'd like to experience that it's not, I'd like to experience that I am open to this greatness, but I've heard that a lot of us aren't, that we don't know how to say thank you and to be grateful for what's coming to us. And you need to be grateful for what's coming to you so that more can come to you. And gratitude, as Carmen, you said a while ago, gratitude is an important, I'm going to call it an empowerment emotion. One of the things that I learned raising my son, when he did something that was deemed wrong, I would say, what lesson did you learn? And he would roll his eyes, especially as a teenager. He'd roll his eyes and go, Mom. I go, no, you need to tell me what lesson you learned. It's not a mistake if you've learned a lesson. And I like to bring that into my own life. If I do something that's a bonehead move, and I've known to do those, it's what's the lesson? What did you learn so that you can move forward?
Go ahead, Carla.
No, go ahead.
That is so important because, maybe something didn't go your way and maybe it felt horrible or it didn't feel good. There's still a lesson in there. So when I was in the corporate world, one of the supervisors I had that I appreciated the most asked me that same question. What did you learn? Instead of framing it as a mistake, which, let's face it, in the corporate world usually doesn't go well, frame it as, what did you learn? I had so much more appreciation for that supervisor. I had so much more gratitude for that supervisor because of that one sentence. And so this is something I do with my kids. What did you learn? What would you do differently? If you could do it again, how would you do it different? And so being willing to have that conversation and being willing to encourage that conversation with others and taking that stance is extremely powerful, because when you ask that question, what would you do differently or what did you learn? And really, you're asking them to visualize a different outcome. Visualize the opportunity in that situation and visualize how it could be great.
Talking about that, I told you one of my visualizations, but the other day I decided the English show and MindPlore being back to back is crazy. I'm no longer doing it, and I'm going to change the dates. And I thought about doing the English show yesterday, and it was actually on a whim because I hadn't told anyone that I was going to start it on Monday and Wednesday, and there possibly will be a show tomorrow. So I found a few people who said, okay, I'll come and I'll help you out. And I did the show. And I thought, well, if we get 10 viewers, I'll be happy. It's the first time we're doing it. Anything that comes. I looked at the views before this show. We had over 300 people viewing the show. Now, granted, the time is a better time for them, it's a better time for me, but the fact that it wasn't announced previously at all, really, except I said it'll be starting on Sunday, so no one knew I was going to do it Monday, but it happened. And it made me realize the power of intent. And I was in the mood. I wanted to do it. So when everyone began showing up, I was like, I believe it. It works. And it'll work. I'm no one special. I mean, we're all special. We're all very unique in our own way. But I'm not anyone more special than Carmen or Jeanne or Rehan Allahwala or anyone in the world. We can all do this. There's no need for bank robberies because we can have all that energy, all that money there for ourselves if we only shift our way of thinking. War could be far gone if we just decide, I want to be peaceful. It can be done. And Jeannie, you're smiling. Do you have something to say?
As you were talking, I started to think about the replicator and the transformer from, I don't know if it's transformer, from Star Trek. Think about Gene Roddenberry and what he visualized in the 60s. You know, in the 60s, we didn't really have microwaves like we do today. And they opened up this gadget that looked like a microwave, and they had, you know, this huge gourmet dinner, you know, just sort of materialized out of nothing. And, you know, so that's the replicator was able to make whatever. You wanted a cup of coffee, you open the door and there's a cup of coffee. You know, and now we have microwaves, and we can pretty much do just about that. You get your, you know, your chef-made meals sent to you, you stick it in the microwave, and there you have it. And the transporter that moves you from one place, I really want the transporter. So as much as I like airplane travel, I'd prefer to just show up, you know. And I know that at one point years ago, I think it was the Lawrence Livermore Lab was working with moving something from one place to the next on a table. And I'm like, yes, it's going to happen, because that was a collective visualization, thanks to Gene Roddenberry. A lot of what we've seen in science fiction, you know, it actually has been coming true. There was a video when I worked at Philips Electronics. We had a video back in 1995 about life 20 years from now. And it was a picturing of what electronics could be and how it would change our life. And they had this great thing where this woman had a pen that looked just like this. And she's traveling through the day, and you see her writing in her journal, just writing all, you know, she's in a meeting, she writes the notes. She's meeting somebody, she writes the notes. And when she got home, she stuck it in a cradle, and it shows up on her computer, all of her notes. We have that today. That's the power of visualization. You know, when they did that, they were dreaming, what could we do with technology? The one that I did miss, they had little pads you put on your fingers, and you just did this, and you were actually typing on your computer. And it would help if people had carpal tunnel or something. So, you know, you get used to it, because this is how we type, right? I really would have liked to seen that come. And I know there's something like it that came through, but it didn't make it into the market. But those are the kinds of things, the kind of power of visualization and collective visualization. And I bring that up because if you have a picture of something that takes more than one person, you want to share it so that those people can visualize with you and make it happen. That's what happens for every movie that we see. There is no movie in this world, I don't think in all of history, that was made by one person that could, you know, give the kind of cinematic quality that we've gotten used to. There are hundreds, and if it's an animation, there are thousands of people that work on it. That's a collective visualization. It's a project that they start out, and it's just a piece of paper, and it ends up being 2.5 hours on the big screen or on the little screen at home. And it's, you know, wows people because it's a sensory kind of thing, and you're actually seeing what somebody else was visualizing. So I like that you talked about the movie in your mind, Carmen, you know, how to see it as disassociated or as associated. And I'm wondering if maybe if you did it both ways, if that really, you know, hunkers it in. I like the idea though of seeing yourself, you know, and if prosperity is something that you need to focus on, see yourself writing the check, or see yourself holding a bank statement that has a really healthy total,
Right.
in your deposits. And, you know, understanding that when there's something like you want to build a church, that you bring other people in. I know Michael Beckwith tells a story of how he started his church, which is, I think it's known as Agape. And he's a very strong motivational speaker as well. But he tells the story about sitting in his living room with a couple of people and saying, this is what I want the church to be. And he's now, one of the more respected speakers around it that talks about religion and love. His church is based on love. We can picture that with just about everybody that we hold up there on a pedestal as being successful. Every quarterback that it makes it through the process and becomes a pro football player, we put on a pedestal. And we forget that they're human and that they had to go through the whole thing. They had teams, they had coaches, they had all these people that helped them get to where they're at. We can do the same thing. We have to have that vision with the purpose, and then let the people that can help us come into our life. We're not doing this alone. And that's, if there's one, let's call it a mistake, and the lesson that I've learned is that I tend to want to do things on my own. I forget that I have a team, and it was really hard for me to transition into being a supervisor and a director, because I had to learn to delegate and trust that the people that took on the activity would do it. They would do it their way, not my way. And I had to be okay with that. And that's the same thing we have to do in life. People are going to come in and they're going to do it their way. But if it gets you from point A to point B, that's okay. And when you get the right team behind you, you're going to just rise up. And when I say rise up, I like to remind people that all boats rise in a tide. So as you rise up, as Marianne Williamson says, as you let the light out, others let their light out. So all boats rise in a time, in the tide. So visualizing greatness helps not just you, but all those around you.
But that's true, not a but, that's true with everything. And we're already all connected. I've never met you ladies in person. But no. I know one thing that we do every day and have been doing from the moment we were born. We breathe in and we breathe out many times throughout the day. And as we are doing that, whether we like it or not, we're sharing our air with whoever got it the last time. The person could be black, pink, or purple. The person can be in Pakistan or in Europe or in Chile or in the United States somewhere. The air doesn't change because of where you are. It just is. And if we only put ourselves in that vortex that creates our thinking, wow, what would that do to us or for us? Carmen?
I've never thought about that, the way you just said that. We're all breathing the same air. Like it makes complete sense as soon as I thought about it. But yeah, the same oxygen molecule that has gone into somebody else has gone into me and back into plants and everything. And so we are all connected. We all are using the same resources, and we all have visions. I guess the question is, how are you going to make it great?
Right.
That's what we've been talking about all day.
And the other thing is, and we keep forgetting, or at least I do, maybe you guys don't, is that because we're all connected, mm-hmm. there's no reason why we may not be, we may actually be one big computer. Are we really flesh and bones and human beings doing human doings? Or are we a computer that was set up by some other civilization living our lives? What are we?
It's funny that you say that for two reasons. I watched one of those history things where they found, fairly recently, they found an underground cavern. I believe it was in South America, but it was like this whole city was underground. And they started to postulate that there was this very, technologically savvy civilization that we know nothing about. And so, I wish I had the chance to watch the whole thing, but I had to get somewhere. But it was fascinating to have that to make you start to think a little bit differently about what do we know. And the other reason that it's fascinating is that you mentioned Tesla. Elon Musk has said that several times, and he actually postulates that we're basically in a computer game, and there's some other intelligence watching us and making things happen. And as much as I think that we need to think differently like that, I like to think that I'm a little bit more in control than having, some teenage boy moving me around. But, that would be my experience of video games. Was watching my son and his friends, but it's like, I read a book a while back from Alexander Sitchin. He's a guy who really focused on the Sumerian tablets and what they meant. And some of the stories that came out in Sumeria are similar to the stories we have in the Bible, and they're similar to stories from other things, which told me that the oral history that started in the earliest of civilizations was very powerful. So sometimes the names are changed to protect the innocent. They change with the cultures. But he postulated in this one book called Gods, Demigods, and Other Giants. He was talking about the planet Nibiru, and he has this theory that in the Sumerian tablets, they talk about this other race that came, and that we can, if we wanted to, we could find DNA in some of the ancient burial grounds. My takeaway is, one, I was interested in the book because I've always heard stuff about aliens had been here before, and aliens, from outer space started us and such. So it was interesting to read somebody who had this theory and postulated it out. But what really happened was it exploded my mind in such a way that I was like, made me think differently about everything that I was brought up learning, everything I was brought up being told. I was brought up in the Catholic religion, and there are certain things that are said that are dogma. You do not break. Well, when you start to think differently, a lot of that dogma just kind of dissipates, and you think, wait a minute, was that something that God said, or is that something that man said? So I started reauthoring way back when, and that opened me up to a whole new spiritual life, because I wasn't just following, I was thinking for myself. And reading books like that, even though I tend to go, oh yeah, well that's a crazy, theory that a lot of people have, but actually reading it and learning what the thought pattern went to come to those conclusions made me rethink things. So I think it's important, as we look at visualizing greatness and the power of intent, that we rethink some of the conclusions that we live with our life. Some of the dogmas that we've put, like, I will never, I actually said once that I would never eat onions. I don't like what onions do to you. You start crying that, I will never eat onions. And then the next thing you know, I'm smelling fried onions. And my mother had to point out to me, I was a teenager, she goes, you've been eating onions all your life. You just like it when they're cooked. So now, the next step is you would say, okay, I like grilled onions. And then next thing you know, I'm not saying hold the onions in a sandwich. So we all go through that as we evolve. We change those dogmatic conclusions that drive who we are. And that's what we have to do so that we can change at the core. Or we can better yet, let our core out. Let our core values guide us.
And that's the point. We forget to do that. We get so stuck in our own thinking that we forget what the world's about. And we don't even know. Who knows? Yeah. Consciousness could be that sky, the space around us. It could be someone playing on a computer on Pluto and they're guiding us through life. We don't know. And yet we say we know.
It's another way of thinking of the higher power.
Mhm.
We know absolutely nothing in reality. Carmen? And we do need to end this very soon, but
Ooh,
Yes, this has been a great conversation. It's flown by. I agree. We think we know. We don't know. I would like to think at some point we figure it out, probably once we've passed on, and it all makes sense to us. And so, you know what? Here's the other thing. Visualization can be fun. It can be playful. It's fun to sit here and think that, yes, maybe a teenage boy I'm their character, I'm their avatar in some video game. It's fun to think about what could be and what might be and what was. So I'm a person who likes to have fun. So bring some fun into your visualization for greatness.
hear, hear.
Mm-hmm.
and I agree. And when we came into this show, we didn't know where it would go, but it really went amazingly well. Thank you, ladies. It is time to close the show. The English show is not today, guys. Don't look for it. I will not be there, but there's a possibility of tomorrow, and definitely on Sunday there will be an English show. I guarantee you that. And with that, we're going to wave goodbye, and we'll be back on Tuesday with MindPlore. Not sure who, what, or where. I know Jeanne will be here. I don't know who else. And we will take it from there. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Jeanne and Carmen. This has been great.
Thank you.